Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Command Point. My name's Ryan,
And I am Shane.
and today we are taking a look at the new rules for the new and improved Intercessor kill team, the Intercession Squad kill team. This is a free rule set available on Games Workshop. On the Warhammer community website. And yeah, this is a really cool team. It's a mix of regular intercessors and assault intercessors, Space Marines, obviously. Yeah, I guess let's just go ahead and get straight into it, Shane.
Yeah. So, like you said, Salt Intercessors, basic Intercessors. Meanwhile, the heavy Intercessors are crying into their pillows right now. They just didn't get to be included in the Intercessor team. But this team, the Intercession
Yes, the
Squad,
Intercession Squad.
can't say I love that name. I'm probably just going to call them Intercessor Team forever. Uh, they have got. So, first of all, I mean, I love that right off the bat, it just seems more basic while still having like a lot of options and stuff. It does feel like a nice departure from what we've kind of gotten used to, where a team is either out of like a box or a white dwarf and they've got like a million rules, or they're the compendium and it's like crickets chirping and then like that's it.
Yeah,
Uh, this team seems to strike a nice balance. So I guess we'll go over it and then at the end we'll give our hot takes because that's what people are here for.
sure, sure. Yeah, you are
Um,
absolutely right about this team. There's not a lot of like aura abilities or ways in which models are buffing other units. Every single one of the models in this team is just like a standalone Space Marine, and they're out here doing Space Marine things as you want them to be.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're here for, right? If you're a Space Marine player, this is like what you've wanted, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and obviously, it's not Death Watch, but I'm sure people that love Death Watch are probably going to like this team because I think it's going to strike that like it's going to like scratch that itch. I think that Death Watch players might have. So let's take a look. So there's first of all, they can take security and seek and destroy in addition to their faction tac ops, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Yeah.
But it's a 6 model squad, just like the all the other elite teams in the game right now, for the most part. You have the choice between an assault intercessor sergeant leader or a regular intercessor sergeant leader. Uh, it is pretty interesting how the options that these have. So I mean, you can't have like a plasma pistol and a power weapon on the assault intercessor sergeant. If you take a plasma pistol, you get a chainsword. If you want that power weapon, you can take a hand flamer or a heavy bolt pistol. So this is something I think they're starting to do this more, and I really like it. Because before it's like there's absolutely no choice to be made, right? It's just you're
Right.
just taking the power weapon and the plasma pistol every time. But now you're actually weighing which of those is more important to me, and I'm a fan of that. Personally, I like the plasma pistol. The chainsword is actually going to be totally fine most of the time, but that plasma pistol is just nasty. Um,
Yeah, it
but
deletes things.
yeah, and then the intercessor sergeant gets to choose between an auto bolt rifle, a regular bolt rifle, or a stalker bolt rifle. And then he can choose a chainsword, his fists. I mean, don't do
So
that.
don't choose the
Power
fists.
fist, power weapon, or thunder hammer. So probably going to be power weapon and either the auto bolt rifle or the regular bolt rifle. Because the stalker, that's a heavy weapon. We don't want that.
No.
Um, not when your alternative is hitting on twos anyway. Sometimes it's ceaseless. And then you pick 5 operatives from the following list, and really it's a basic assault intercessor, a regular intercessor with the same options gun wise as the sergeant. But then you get an assault intercessor grenadier and an intercessor gunner who gets they don't get to take, they just get
Mm-hmm.
an auxiliary grenade launcher and one of those bolt rifle options, which is just super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I guess let's take a quick look at the TAC ops because usually the TAC ops are interesting. I've noticed because there's usually like one good one. Maybe the good teams are gonna have 2 good ones. I, and if you're playing Corsairs, you get 0 good ones. But this team, I think, has at least 1 or 2 good ones. So I think it's pretty on the line.
Yes. Yes.
So do you want to talk about shock and awe, which is my favorite?
Yeah, it's my favorite too. So you reveal this tac op in the reveal tac op step of any turning point, and at the end of any turning point, if friendly operatives control one or more objective markers that were controlled by enemy operatives at the start of the turning point, you score 1 VP. If you achieve the first condition in any subsequent turning points, you score another VP. This one's pretty straightforward. You just want to take over the objectives that your opponent is controlling that turn. It's
Yep.
what Space Marines want to do anyway, especially with this team. They want to get in their face quickly, they want to kill them all, and they want to take the objective.
Yeah. I mean, how often are you looking at this and being like, "Oh, looks like a bad pick this game."
It
Right?
I like it a lot because it's something that rewards you for already playing the primary objective. So it's just
Yeah.
one less thing to think about.
Yep. I love it. I think on certain missions like domination, it maybe if you want to like take the first point or the middle point early, it might be harder to get those back ones, but like I don't know. I still think that this is just going to be good all the time.
Mhm.
I don't know. I love it. And then there's Champion of Mankind. So you reveal it when a friendly intercessor operative incapacitates an enemy operative at the end of the battle. If that friendly operative has incapacitated more enemy operatives than each other friendly intercessor operative test during the battle, you score 1 victory point. And then if that friendly operative is incapacitated more enemy operatives than each other enemy operative has during the battle, you score 1 victory point. So I just said operative a lot.
Yeah.
Ryan, do you want to just explain it in plain terms?
All right. So you got to have one of your intercessors kill more of the enemy than any of the other intercessors on your team, and that same intercessor has got to kill uh, more of the enemy than any of the enemy kills of your models. All right. Did everybody get that?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I'd give this one a C, honestly.
Yeah. It's okay. Like, I can see it being okay against, like, a horde team maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
But
definitely against a horde. If you're really tech into like shooting, or if you wind up taking like a power fist on your sergeant or something for that 7 points of damage. But yeah, it's definitely not as good as shock and awe. There's better secondaries out there that you can take in place of this.
yeah. And then there's Indomitable Superiority.
Yeah.
If enemy operatives do not control any objective markers, but an intercessor squad operative does, you score a victory point. And then if the second bullet is if there are any less operatives in the kill zone than there are friendly operatives in the kill zone,
All right.
you
So
score one. So that first one is tough. I mean, they need to hold nothing.
yeah, this objective is bad on multiple levels. Your opponent needs to be holding no objective markers, and then there needs to be less enemy operatives in the kill zone than there are friendly intercessors in the kill zone. You're already starting with just 6 models. So in order to whittle down like some of these horde teams, that may be really, really hard to do. This is a secondary that rewards you for already winning the game.
Yeah.
It's not going to help you win the game. So
Right.
this
I
is
do.
this is an F for me.
Here's what's it's not enough for me because just because of the one scenario where you're playing against 4 Custodes and you just get a free victory point on the first
Oh,
turn,
yo, that's so true, actually.
which is so stupid,
All
but or
right.
heavy intercessors, that's the other team where
Okay, cool, cool. So, D minus.
Yeah.
It's
No, right,
it's it's
like
not a
you said,
passing grade for sure. I can't give you a
no.
passing grade for this one.
But it's okay because Shotgun's just so good
Yeah,
that it doesn't matter.
yeah.
So let's talk about honestly, they get security and seek and destroy, which I think are going to be great for this team anyway. So
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
if even one of these is good, that's like a bonus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about the chapter tactics because this is kind of
Yes.
like the main thing that this team gets.
Yeah.
Basically, you have these 15 or no 12 chapter tactics here. So they're like abilities that you select on when you create your roster, and every model on your team gets that just for the whole game. Um, and they're split into these 4 categories, but the categories don't really matter unless you're using like a specific tac op. So kind of just ignore the categories when you're picking for your roster. because they don't matter. What's important is that you have to pick two. You get these two always, and you have a ploy that you can use to like swap one out that'll be related to the category it's in. But I mean, do we want to just go over this? So I mean, do you want to start with the martial zealotry options?
Top of the martial zealotry chapter tactics here, we have aggressive. Each time this operative fights in combat, in an activation in which it performed a charge action, its melee weapons gain the rending critical hit rule for that combat. Um, I like that.
Solid, yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, one thing you're going to notice when you're reading these is that they all sound good. None of these are going to be like, "Oh, that sucks." They're all good. It's just going to be a matter of picking which good things you want to always have on your team, which I like. That
Mm-hmm.
feels better to me than being forced to take like the least crappy thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have Dueler. So this one's super interesting. Each time this operative fights in combat in the resolved successful hit step of that combat, each time it parries with a critical hit, you can select an additional normal hit of your opponent's to be discarded. So I think that one's super interesting. Shane, what do you think about this one?
I mean, that's pretty. It's like having a storm shield, kind of. It's not quite as good as a storm shield for like the double parry thing, but I think it's pretty interesting. If you're up against like a team that isn't particularly good in melee, like they're only getting 3 attacks, usually
Yeah.
you'll if you have this, you're just gonna parry everything they have and then kill them.
Yeah, that's exactly what
Um,
I was thinking. And with the way that melee combat works in this game, um, you want to be avoiding as much chip damage as possible in combat anyways. So I think this one could like be like not even like a sleeper pick. It's too early to tell like what the meta for the for the chapter tactics are going to be for this team, I think, but that one is up there for me right now.
so rapid is simple, cut and dry. You just add an inch to the operative's movement characteristic. I
Always
mean,
good. Always
love
good.
that. That's
Mhm.
probably my favorite of these first 3 of the martial, zealotry, personally. It's just so, like, basic and, having these guys moving 7 inches or, like, charging 9 inches, it's just kinda nuts.
So next is tactical evasion chapter tactics. We have got Raider. So this one's really interesting. This operative can perform the charge action while within engagement range of an enemy operative. In addition, each time this operative performs a normal move action, it cannot move within engagement
You
range of
can.
an enemy, or it can't. Oh, yeah, excuse me. It can move within engagement range of an enemy operative, but cannot finish its move there. So this one gives you it makes your Space Marines really slippery.
Yeah.
Um, if anybody's trying to move block you, this effectively like nullifies it unless they're move blocking you with just like their whole base and like a narrow choke point or something.
Pretty
Some
interesting.
someone's gonna figure out a way to make this work like amazingly, I think.
I
Like
think the first part might not be that great just because if you're in engagement range of something, as we're gonna find out, you're probably killing it most of the time,
yeah,
but that
true.
second part is intriguing to me,
Yeah, in the mirror, it might be really good. Yeah, just
right?
because like performing that charge action even while you're already within engagement range, um, you're gonna get first hit that way. So I think of it as
Mhm.
kind of like a fights first potentially type situation.
Yeah, I want to talk about stealthy here
Yeah,
because this is one
sure.
of my favorite ones.
Oh,
So,
really? Okay.
it is, yeah. Each time a shooting attack is made against this operative, in the roll defense dice step of that shooting attack before rolling your defense dice, if it's in cover and more than 6 inches from the active operative, you can do one of the following: retain one additional die as a successful normal save as a result of cover, or you can retain one dice as a successful critical save instead of a normal save as a result of cover. So I've played a lot of Wormblade, and the cult agents have an ability that's basically very similar to this. They don't have the 6 inch qualifier.
Mm-hmm.
This is really good in my opinion, just for keep like if you want to play more aggressively with your models. This ability here is going to let you trade a lot more liberally with some of these teams that you'd otherwise be afraid of getting into shootouts with.
Mm.
Being able to save two out of your three saves without having to even roll anything is just amazing. Um, and being able to retain that cover or that critical save with your one is even better sometimes. And honestly, I've mathed this out back when I was playing Wormblade a lot, and I think there's situations for both, but I think more often than not, it's better to save a crit, assuming they have a crit in there. This is just, I mean, it's very good. Um, I'm a huge fan of this one. Passing grade for me. I give it a nice A.
An A? That's more than a passing grade.
Very passing. It's doing quite well.
All right. Next up we have got mobile. This operative can perform the fallback action for one less action point to a minimum of 1 AP. So, if you've ever played Ultramarines in Big 40K, one of the things that they can do is fall back and shoot, which a lot of other, units and armies can't do. It's one of the things that makes them unique. So if you're trying to LARP as Ultramarines, this is the one for you. Especially if you're taking intercessors, if one of them gets charged, fall back with him his fallback costs 2 AP.
Mhm.
So you fall back for 1 AP, and then with the other 2 AP, you just shoot the model that just charged you.
Yeah.
Because as we haven't talked about it yet, but the intercessors, their one of their abilities, their only ability I think actually is Bolter Discipline. You get to shoot twice.
Yeah. Not as a ploy, but just as a passive ability, which is
Big fan of
very,
that.
very good.
Yeah.
Mm. So let's move on to Gene Rot Resilience. There's Unyielding, which I think is right out the bat going to be a really popular one for people.
Mm-hmm.
Add one to this operative's wounds characteristics. So in the compendium, intercessors have 13 wounds, with the sergeants having 14. So in this team, though, in the intercession team, the intercessors have 14 base, with the sergeants having 15. If you give them unyielding, that's 15 wound basic intercessors and a 16 wound sergeant on the 6 operative team. That is nuts. I mean, I haven't really gone deep into like the exact math that's gonna where this ends up being relevant, but just as a stat line, 15 wound marines, 16 wound sergeants sounds crazy, and I'm a fan of it.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds pretty good to me.
Next up is durable. We have critical hits, inflict 1 less damage on this operative, so it literally turns, in most cases, crit into just normal damage.
Yeah, I love
I'm
that personally.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, I actually really like it.
Do you put it above or below unyielding?
Oh, it's so tough. Well, you have to think how many times you're getting hit with a crit, right? Because each time you get hit with a crit, if you have durable, it's like you have one extra wound effectively.
Okay.
So if you expect to get hit by a crit more than once in a game, it's kind of better, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty
And
safe
if
bet.
you're only getting hit by a crit once in a game, then it's just as good. It's only worse really if you're never getting hit by a crit ever. So I actually think that durable might be better than unyielding, just like flat out.
Makes
Maybe
sense.
why not take both?
Oh no.
So
All
then
right.
we have Hardy. Hardy, each time a shooting attack is made against this operative in the roll defense dice step of that shooting attack, retained defense dice results of 5 up are crit saves. It's like lethal 5, but like the opposite.
Reverse. Yeah.
That's okay. It's not as good as like a weapon having lethal 5 because you only have 3 saves. Usually, most weapons that have lethal 5 are going to have 4 or 5 attacks or shots. Um, this is probably, I don't know. This one seems like the worst of the ones we've looked at, especially when you could just take stealthy, right? And then if you're in cover, you're getting crits way easier anyway.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I don't know. I would give this one a. This is like a C to me. I don't
Yeah,
know if
that's
any of
what I'm
these would be
thinking.
lower than a C if I'm being
No,
honest.
I don't think any of them are so far. Um, Next up is the Discipline of Iron subcategory. We've got Accurate. Each time this operative makes a shooting attack with a bolt weapon, if you retain any critical hits, that weapon gains the no cover special rule for that shooting attack. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this one is like sometimes it doesn't matter because they just might not have cover anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And you're relying on a crit, which we'll get into it, but there's like a way to give one guy lethal 5.
Yep,
I
there
don't know if
sure
it's worth
is.
to take. I don't know if it's worth taking accurate just for that one equipment piece, but uh, I don't love this one. This one might be the lowest on my ranking personally. Not that we're doing a ranking, but I don't know if you need this. Eh, I don't know. You want to talk about methodical? So this is my favorite one. This is actually my real favorite one.
Oh, okay. Well, you talk about it then.
This one is the one that I think personally I will be taking every time I play this team,
Wow. Okay.
unless they change it. So methodical, you can ignore any or all modifiers to the ballistic skill and weapon skill characteristic of this operative's weapons. So if you're injured, you're not suffering that minus. If you're overwatching, you're not suffering that minus. This is so good. I mean, this is just really good in my
Oh,
opinion
I didn't.
because
I didn't think about the Overwatch.
yeah, any or all modifiers. So the only modifier you have to worry about, period, if you're injured is the movement. All right, like having that one less circle. Um, I think I think this is really good. Especially with you've only got 6 models. A lot of the time, once a model gets injured, it's just like it's a toss up on whether their activation is actually going to be any good or not because you're usually hitting on 4s now. So it's like you're coin flipping every attack. Um, but with methodical, you don't ever have to worry about that. You can have a 1 wound marine, that is capable of, like, killing multiple things still in its turn reliably because of methodical. And because of that, I really, really like methodical, and I think I'm gonna be stapling it to my intercessor roster here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Lastly, we have Deadly Sharpshooter. So for the bolt weapon this operative is equipped with, subtract 1 from its crit damage characteristic, and it gains the Mortal Wounds 1 critical hit rule. So throwing out a mortal wound on a crit.
I can't imagine ever taking this, but I still like it more than, hardy and accurate. I just do. I love having Mortal Wound 1,
Yeah.
and it like, some people are gonna look at this and be like, "Oh, it's like the same thing," but obviously it is slightly better. I wish there was, like, a rending weapon, so that way you could pair this with a rending, so that way you get a crit and it's like 2 mortals.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't believe there's any rending on this team except for aggressive, which is not
Yeah.
a bolt weapon thing.
That is
What are your
the
favorites, Ryan? What's here's a hot take before we move on to the tac
sure,
ops.
sure,
What are your
sure.
favorite 2? What like if you make a roster right now, what 2 are you taking? I'm curious.
So I actually did some brainstorming last night, and I we were hanging out what feels like probably like 2 months ago, and remember I was kit bashing up some of those Black Templar intercessors and assault intercessors.
Mhm.
Well, I think what I did was I wanted to like reflect their chapter tactics in 40K as best I could and kill team with this list here. So I chose to go with aggressive for the rending critical hit rule in melee. And then I
Mhm.
also chose unyielding. But now that you were talking about how durable works, I think I would probably switch from unyielding to durable.
Nice. I really like that thought, Ryan. The idea of going for trying to replicate that Black Templar play style. So for my side, I think you can already tell that I really love methodical. I'm a huge fan of that ignore, injury thing. It's one of my favorite parts about playing Plague Marines. If I ever do that,
Yep.
and I think Custodes players, if you've played a lot of Custodes, you probably know how good that is too. So I think I'll be stapling methodical to, like I said earlier, to my intercessor roster. And the second one is more of a toss up between durable, because of that critical hit inflicting 1 less damage, and stealthy. Um, I can see myself if I'm up against like a gun line, perhaps using stealthy, um,
Oh yeah.
especially if I'm anticipating running a lot of regular intercessors that want to get in those shootouts. I can see that being a really powerful ability, but it is tempting too to just do like durable or unyielding paired with methodical and just pretend like I'm playing Plague Marines, right?
Yeah.
It's just my Nurgle intercessors that never die.
Yeah, basically. The other
Um,
the
yeah.
other thought that I had was Dueler with Raider. Um, just
Mhm.
because you're just turning into like this melee monster where it's like you want to be in melee all the time and you're not really that worried about, taking chip damage from like horde teams. I don't know, it just seems really interesting to me.
It is an interesting combination of like charging one model and like parrying them down and then staying in combat with them instead of killing them. Like paring them down because of Dueler, and kind of like using that safety in combat so that you can't get shot at. And then next turn, because you have Raider, you can charge from that operative onto another operative that's further back that might be a more high value target.
Exactly.
So I think that is a really interesting combination there, and I really like that thought.
All right. So let's go ahead and move on now to their ploys. This is the one thing I actually did not take notes on last night, so this will kind of be a fresh look for me. Do you want to start us off here with the strategic ploys?
Sure. So we've got a few doctrine ploys, and it's worth noting it's going to say on all these that you can only use one of these ploys per turn if it says doctrine at the end of it. So very reminiscent of 40k Space Marines, but
Yep,
let's take a look. So we've got the Devastator doctrine. So until the end of the turning point, each time a friendly intercessor operative makes a shooting attack against an enemy operative that's more than 6 inches from it, and the roll attack dice step of that shooting attack, you can re-roll one of your attack dice. So that's great. And I'm gonna skip reading it over again. Tactical doctrine's the same thing, except if they're within 6 inches. So it would make sense that if you're early in the game, you might be more willing to take Devastator doctrine when your opponents are across the board. But maybe later in the game, when things start getting a little more up close, you take that tactical doctrine and you get that reroll because they might be up in your face, or inversely, you might be up in their face. And then we've got the assault doctrine, which is more melee centric. Basically, whenever you charge, I guess sorry, if you perform a charge action and when you fight in that activation and the roll attack dice step of the combat, you get to re-roll one of your attack dice. This one I think is less good, just because the models that are going to be using it a lot of the time, the assault intercessors, they don't really need the re-rolls. They're going to have 5 attacks on threes, whereas I think the bolt weapons and shooting are going to get a lot more mileage out of those rerolls
yeah,
from the tech doctrine and the devastator doctrine. That's just my first opinion on it. And then, of course, we have And They Shall Know No Fear, which is cool to see this as a strategic ploy. We saw this from the Phobos team as well. You ignore any or all modifiers to the APL of friendly intercession squad operatives, and they are never injured. So, one of the reasons why I really like the methodical chapter tactic is because it kind of eliminates the need for ever having to spend CP on this.
yep,
I mean, you could look at it the other way, right? As you can say, well, I can just spend a CP if I get injured, and then I don't have to take methodical, which is true. But I personally rather save the CP for your tac ploys and your strategic ploys rather than taking a different free chapter tactic, and just running They Shall Know No Fear all the time.
right, right. So looking here at the tactical ploys, first up we have adaptive tactics for 1 CP. Use this tactical ploy in the select a kill team step when selecting your kill team. Change one of your chapter tactics. Uh, change one of your chapter tactics abilities from the battle to another from the same category. You can only use this ploy once per battle. So probably not the best use of CP, because you're probably already building a team around, the two chapter tactics. I don't know. Maybe treat this thing as like a sideboard type deal. What do you think?
Yeah, and it's interesting that it has to come from the same category too. So right off the bat, if I'm taking methodical, if I want to swap out methodical, which I probably never will, then my other options are accurate or deadly sharpshooter, which don't really seem super useful to me. At least, and there's certainly no replacement for methodical. They're doing completely different things. But what I do like for instance, say I have stealthy as one of my two, and I run up against a team that has very little shooting. Then in that instance, I might want to swap adaptive tactics to something like Raider or Mobile.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the time you're not going to need to use this. It's kind of a niche thing. It's cool that you have the flexibility to do it if you want, though. And like you said, this definitely has potential at a tournament. Um, that being said, you're starting down a CP, which never feels great.
All right, so next up we have Transhuman Physiology for 1 CP. Uses tactical ploy in the roll defense dice step of a shooting attack. After rolling defense dice for a friendly Intercession squad operative, you can retain one of your successful normal saves as a critical save instead.
Yeah,
So,
this is classic. I love
yeah,
this play.
yeah,
It's just what I like about it is that it's a sure thing. It's almost like the faith point stuff, right? That novitiates have, where they're spending their currency and they're not re-rolling, right? They're not like spending their currency to get a maybe. It's when you spend what you're getting, and
yeah, it's a
that's
sure thing. Next up we have Angel of Death, once again for 1 CP. Use this tactical ploy at the end of the firefight phase. Select one friendly Intercessor Squad operative to perform a free fight action. Okay, so it's possible to have a Assault Intercessor fight 3 times in the
yeah,
same round. That's pretty cool. Um, I'm excited to play this team, man. There's just
yeah, me too.
a lot of different avenues of play with these guys.
Yeah, I will say Angel of Death is kind of scary in the sense it's cool if you're in combat with multiple things. But let's say you, because this happens at the end of the firefight phase, so it's before the next turn starts, before you roll initiative. If you're in combat with one thing and use Angel of Death and kill it, and the next turn you lose initiative, suddenly you've got that model sitting out in the open,
True.
no longer safe in combat. So that can be a little bit of a you can kind of bite
Situational.
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Lastly, here we have Wrath of Vengeance for 1 CP. Use this tactical ploy when a friendly Intercessor's operative is incapacitated. Before that operative is removed from the kill zone, it can perform a free shoot action, unless otherwise specified the operative would be injured for this.
Yeah,
So, shoot on
it's
death,
that's good.
yeah.
And the nice part is you'd be injured for it, and if you're taking methodical,
Yeah,
you
it
don't
just
care.
all comes back to methodical.
I think it's the best.
All
I do
right.
think it's the best.
I think you're right.
Just a huge fan of it. So now we get to do the really exciting task of actually looking at the operatives.
Mm-hmm.
So we've already talked about the loadouts here as we scroll down and look at the sergeants. Like I mentioned, though, 15 wounds on the sergeants, 14 wounds on the basic guys. That's a lot. That is a very tanky team that we have here. Not quite on the level of um, like a plague marine, in my opinion, but this is pretty close. As we mentioned before, so an assault intercessor, and this the sergeant has it, but all the assault intercessors have this. They have shock assault as a passive ability. They can always perform 2 fight actions. This is kind of unheard of on a team wide level. Usually, these kinds of abilities are either restricted to a single model, or it's a strategic play that you need to pay for in the strategy phase. But
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they can just always fight twice, or if it's a regular intercessor, they can shoot twice. The action economy of this team is kind of just through the roof in terms of like the offensive action economy, I guess I should say. Just being able to always, deal damage and play aggressive and take enemies off the board. I'm a huge fan of that. Worth noting for the sergeants is that the assault intercessor sarge, his plasma pistol hits on threes,
Yeah.
not twos, and conversely, the regular intercessor sergeant, his power weapon and chainsword, they only have 4 attacks hitting on threes, not 5 on twos or anything. So it makes sense, but these sergeants aren't as insane as most sergeants are.
Right.
So I guess, I mean, is there anything you want to highlight on the like basic guys before we talk about like the grenadier and the gunner?
Nothing really. Like I said before, assault intercessors, they get the shock assault. ability where they can perform two fight actions during their activation. Two fight actions during their activation. So that's pretty cool. And then they also the regular intercessors, they've got Bolter Discipline where they can perform two shoot actions. I do want to highlight that the Stalker Bolt Rifle I think is just bad on this
Yeah.
team because it's a heavy weapon. You've only got 6 models on this team. You want to get the most mobility and firepower out of them as you possibly can, and taking a Stalker Bolt Rifle is just going to hamstring one of those models and just bring the whole team down. So I say either go Auto Bolt Rifle or Bolt Rifle. I do like the Bolt Rifle with a specific piece of equipment that we're going to talk about here soon, but yeah.
Yeah. So I guess going down to the Grenadier, it's important to note that this model just gets frag and crack grenades all the time.
Yep.
Um, I guess I should say they don't cost equipment points. To my understanding, they're still limited. It's just you just get them for free. So you can, I think you can only use them once per, because otherwise we've had situations in the past where it clarifies that they don't have the limited rule. It doesn't say that here, so I would imagine you get your crack grenade and your frag grenade on this model, and once you use it, it's gone. And then looking at the intercessor gunner, so the grenade launcher, it's just a grenade launcher. But here's the interesting thing: Bolter Discipline says this operative can perform two shoot actions during its activation if a bolt weapon is selected for at least one of those shooting attack. So in the
Ooh, I like
yeah,
that.
so this goes for other like for grenades too. For the yeah, like if you take a crack grenade or something for some reason on a intercessor, but for the intercessor gunner, you can shoot your grenade launcher and then shoot your bolt rifle. That's a legal thing. Whereas in the past, bolter discipline usually means both need to be bolter weapons.
Right.
This team just kind of over and over again, it just looks like they have less limitations than a lot of other bespoke teams.
Yeah.
And I think that's because their toolbox isn't as complex, so there isn't the need for these limitations. And it strikes me as a really fun team to play um, right off the bat. So Ryan, you had some thoughts about the equipment. Do you want to start us off on those?
Yeah, sure. So, that piece of equipment on the bolt rifle I wanted to talk about, that is the Vengeance class scope for 3 equipment points. Select a bolt rifle or stalker bolt rifle. Hint, we're never going to be taking the stalker bolt rifle. Um, that weapon gains the lethal 5-up special rule for the battle, and that is important because lethal 5-up, I believe, chains with the P1 critical hit rule. So it just up for 3 equipment points. You're just upping your chances of critting with the bolt rifle. Um, you know, it turns it into a real weapon as opposed to just a regular bolter.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time, I'm going to be tempted to for the vengeance class just take that 3 times.
Yeah.
um,
I mean,
I mean,
especially
that
with
is
like the methodical,
yeah,
and it
that's
just
really interesting.
yeah. You want to talk about the next one?
The Reclusium Blessed Bolts. So this one you can only take once. Um, and this is kind of the main reason why I won't take 3 vengeance class scopes is because I can't see myself not taking this on the leader, like an intercessor leader. It's 3 equipment points. You just make the bolt gun 4/5 instead of 3/4. So you put this on a leader who's hitting on twos. Yeah, that is really strong. Hitting on twos, and if you want to go super crazy, you can give the leader Vengeance class scope and Reclusium Blessed bolts, and you just have this guy, this turret in the back line. That's your
Yeah,
leader,
yeah.
shooting twice, hitting on twos, damage 4/5 with P1 and lethal 5. That's just nuts.
Just make him the main character. Yeah.
I mean that's just so good, right?
Yeah. All right, so next up here we have Tilting Shield for 3 equipment points. Each time this operative fights in combat in the roll attack dice step of that combat, your opponent cannot retain attack dice results of less than 6 as critical hits. So this basically nullifies the lethal X or rending rules.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty interesting. In my Black Templars list I had written up, I had this on on an assault intercessor sergeant with a heavy bolt pistol and power fist, just for some extra durability. Um, probably don't want to be taking this in every matchup because there's just some teams out there that don't have melee weapons with lethal X or rending. So yeah, I think it's okay. I give it a
Yeah,
C.
there's certain teams, in my opinion, that you'll take this against them. Like, say you have three, you say you're going 3 and 3, three intercessors, three assault intercessors, and if you put this on your three assault intercessors, there are certain teams that are just going to be like bewildered
Just
as to how
absolutely
they're
hamstrung. Yeah.
yeah as like how do I kill this model? I'm because like if I'm playing like for instance, say you're playing Corsairs
Uh huh.
and your melee, the only thing keeping your melee relevant is lethal 5, right? And say you're playing against like you're playing a bunch of you've got a few like assault intercessors, you give them the tilting shields, and then you also give them dueler, so you're parrying twice,
Yep. Yep.
and they're not counting their crit, their lethal 5 crits against you. It's like, what are they supposed to do in in melee? They just fold. I mean, granted, they're going to fold anyway because they're Corsairs against this, but I mean, this is just brutal, right?
Yeah. I like it. I like it. We've got the Purity Seal. This hasn't really changed from its previous iterations. It's 3 equipment points. You can take as many of it as you want, once per battle, whenever you're making a shooting attack, or whenever you're fighting in combat, or whenever somebody is shooting at you. You can use the command reroll tactical ploy for free.
Yeah, on some teams that don't have amazing options for equipment, I actually do like Purity Seals, but this team has some great equipment options, and I just don't know. Like, if I ever did take it, it would probably be on like the intercessor sergeant with his plasma pistol, maybe.
I could see
But
that, yeah.
that's the only situation I can think of. Next up, we've got the Auspex, which can only be taken once. It's 2 equipment points. You get the Auspex scan ability. It's 1 AP. You select an enemy operative visible to or within 6 inches of this operative, and until the end of the turning point, they're not obscured, and they cannot retain dice from cover. It's
I
I don't
like
like
it.
this.
Yeah,
You go first because you just
yeah.
said you like it, and I just said I don't like it.
Yeah,
So you
I
start.
like it, but I don't like it that much. Like I wound up passing on it in the list I had written up. For me, it's that 6 inches. If I'm a Space Marine, if I got a Space Marine within 6 inches of a model, I don't want to spend 1 AP
Well,
to.
it's or to be fair, it's visible to or. But
Oh, it's visible to or within six
yeah,
inches. Oh, okay. Well, now I like it a lot more.
and
I mean, we were
I
just talking about that sergeant with the Super Bolt rifle, just hanging out in the backfield. I mean, this makes it easier for him to see some targets to shoot at.
for sure, and I think on some boards with really dense heavy terrain, I think there's definitely an argument for it. But one of the things we talked about early on, Ryan, was that we really like how this team feels like every model is very self-sufficient, and you're not worrying about auras
True.
because you've got 6 models, right? And you want them all to be doing their own thing and supporting themselves rather than having one guy that helps another guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Auspex scan it doesn't particularly serve the function that I think this team really wants. But I do agree that there are some board layouts where something like this could be really powerful.
Yeah.
So, do we want to move on to the 1 equipment point combat blade?
Yeah. Uh,
Uh,
you,
you go ahead. You
yeah,
take this one.
Space Marine gets a knife. They get 4 attacks, hitting on threes, damage 3/5. Honestly, the 5 damage for crits, that's not bad. And it's 1 EP. From the
You might have
sounds,
one left
you might
over.
have one left over. Just throw it on an intercessor, just in case.
It's barely better than fist. The only difference is the extra crit damage. Other than that, it's the same as fist.
Yeah, yeah.
So kind of like
Throw it on
bad, but
your
it's 1 point. Yeah.
throw it on the intercessor gunner because you're always going to be taking that model anyways.
Hmm.
There you go.
Frag and crack grenades, honestly, useless because you have that grenadier. In my opinion, I think you'll always take that grenadier,
Right.
which these these equipment pieces off the table. Obviously, crack grenades are amazing, but you'll never be able to take it. So, which is a good thing for this team because now, right, you have more equipment points for the Vengeance class scope, for the Reclusium Blessed Bolts, potentially the Tilting Shield in some situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I really love the equipment options for this team. This is like lately, I feel like I'm looking at the new bespoke teams like out of the Morak, and I'm looking at the equipment options, and I'm just kind of not thrilled. But some of these choices are really, really strong,
Yeah.
and it feels like a departure, in my opinion.
Yeah, so that is pretty much everything for the new Intercession team, outside of like the narrative rules and the spec ops, rare equipment, all that sort of stuff. If you're interested in that, I'm gonna leave a link in the description below for you guys to go and find this free rules document for the new Intercessor team. Shane, how would you build your Intercessor kill team?
Well, my gut says that I really want an intercessor sergeant, not the assault intercessor sergeant, because I think that the hitting on twos and shooting is more valuable than hitting on twos in melee. Personally, just because your alternatives for the assault intercessors are already getting 5 attacks, right? So you usually don't need that volume as badly. I think a lot of the time we're going to see we're probably going to see the intercessor gunner and the grenadier every game. So that's 3 of your 6 operatives right there.
Mm-hmm.
One of which is an assault intercessor because the grenadier
Yep.
and the intercessor sergeant having the option for a melee weapon. And I think it's going to be a tough call on whether or not you want to take just 3 regular intercessors or maybe take 2 intercessors and 1 assault. I think the shooting playstyle might be a little bit stronger, but I can totally see having a nice healthy mix in there as well. As I've already mentioned, I'm probably going to be taking methodical as often as I can, paired with either stealthy or durable, maybe unyielding. How about you?
Yeah, so I think I want to find I'm looking for like a balance between good melee models and good shooting. I think I'm with you on taking the intercessor sergeant just for, the better shooting. Um and the obviously we're going to be taking the intercessor gunner and the assault intercessor grenadier. But the rest I think I would just fill out with just assault intercessors. And then for chapter tactics, I really do like the aggressive and the not the unyielding, but the durable, the durable for the chapter tactics. Or, if I really want to get fancy with it, I do want to try out dueler with raider at some point because I think there's some neat tricks that you could perform in melee that you wouldn't otherwise be able to perform in any other team really.
Hmm. I really like that dueler raider idea. It's not something I thought of until you mentioned it, and I can see it being like, even if it's not the most optimal thing, I can see it being a really fun play style
Mm-hmm.
that could potentially have an avenue. So, do you have any hot takes on this team, Ryan? Do you want to start?
Hot takes. Geez, I don't know. So you got 6 models here who I say effectively have like 16 and 15 wounds.
Hmm.
If you're gonna be taking either unyielding or durable, essentially. So that's a lot of bodies. They've got really good saves. With the chapter tactics, that gives them a bunch of like really cool bonuses. I don't want to say this is a top tier team because I don't truly think it is. You know, I'm talking about how tanky these guys are, but it's nothing that like a melt-a-gun wouldn't be able to smoke through. So, um, but this team is competitively viable. It's at least A tier for me if we're doing a tier list.
I appreciate I do like acknowledge and appreciate the approach you're taking of being cautious. It is a brand new team. On one hand, I do want to shy away a little bit from being too having too strong of an opinion at the gate, but at the same time, I do kind of have a strong opinion at the gate,
Yeah, it's a hot take. Give us the hot take,
yeah,
Shane.
I think this is the best elite team in the game right now, coming right out of the gate, and I think it's going to be a really strong part of the meta in the same way that Void Dancers came and were immediately pretty dominant. I think they're a lot easier to play, which is going to, in all likelihood, lead to a pretty high win rate, like we saw from Void Dancers.
Mm.
So um, that paired with just the sheer quality of the models that we're dealing with, and the low cognitive load that I think is going to be involved with the team,
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to be an S tier team right out of the gate, and maybe on the into the dark meta that we're kind of entering. I think this has a sleeper potential to be the single best team, but it remains to be seen, obviously, and we're going to have to see how it does in tournament play. But I'm really excited to put them on the table and to see just how strong they're going to be.
Well, all right, guys, you heard it here first. Space Marine meta confirmed in Kill Team. Back to Shane and mine's glory days of Kill Team First Edition. I could not be happier with this team.
Just give
Uh,
me a storm shield.
yeah, just give me a jump pack. Um, yeah. Thank you guys for watching today's video. If you like the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell us how we're doing. Tell us what you guys think of the new Intercession Squad Kill Team down in the comments below. If you want to continue the conversation, go ahead and join our Discord. Link to that in the description below. And, if you want to support us, you really like what we're doing and you want to go beyond just liking, commenting, and subscribing, go ahead and check out our Patreon. We've got some cool stuff for our patrons over there, and we'd be happy to have you and forever grateful for your support. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again in the next one.